The Seeds of Tyranny, Hitler's Early Life. Adolf Hitler's path to infamy began in the quiet Austrian town of Brauna am Inn, a small town nestled along the banks of the Inn River. This seemingly unremarkable place would become the birthplace of one of history's most infamous figures. Born on April 20th, 1889, Hitler's early life was marked by family strife and academic struggles. His father, Alois Hitler, was a stern and authoritarian figure, a customs official who demanded strict obedience and discipline from his children. Alois's rigid expectations clashed with the young Hitler, who showed little interest in traditional education. Instead, Adolf was drawn to the arts, particularly painting, a passion that his father dismissed as frivolous and unworthy. This tumultuous upbringing, coupled with the simmering nationalist tensions of the time, sowed the seeds of resentment and ambition in the young Hitler. The political climate in Austro-Hungary was charged with ethnic strife and nationalist fervor, which would later influence Hitler's own radical ideologies. After a period of drifting and unfulfilled artistic aspirations in Vienna, Hitler found himself drawn to the volatile world of politics. Vienna, with its vibrant cultural scene and political unrest, was a melting pot of ideas and ideologies, many of which were extreme and divisive. The Austro-Hungarian Empire, a patchwork of ethnicities and simmering resentments, provided fertile ground for extremist ideologies. Hitler's time in Vienna exposed him to a variety of political movements, including those that espoused German nationalism and anti-Semitism. It was during this time that Hitler's worldview began to solidify, shaped by a potent mixture of German nationalism, anti-Semitism, and a deep-seated belief in his own destiny. He became increasingly convinced that he was destined for greatness, a belief that would drive his future actions. The outbreak of World War I in 1914 provided Hitler, then a struggling artist, with a sense of purpose. The war offered him an escape from his aimless existence and a chance to prove his loyalty to the German nation. He volunteered for the German army, eager to prove his loyalty to the nation he had embraced. The camaraderie and structure of military life appealed to him, and he quickly adapted to the rigors of soldiering. Serving as a dispatch runner on the Western Front, Hitler experienced the horrors of trench warfare firsthand. The brutal conditions and constant threat of death left a lasting impact on him, hardening his resolve and deepening his sense of purpose. He was wounded in action and decorated for bravery, experiences that would profoundly shape his worldview and fuel his burning resentment towards the Treaty of Versailles, which he saw as a humiliating defeat for Germany. The treaty's harsh terms and the subsequent economic hardships it imposed on Germany only intensified his anger and sense of betrayal. The seeds of Hitler's radical ideology were sown in the trenches of the First World War. The camaraderie and shared suffering of the front lines forged a deep bond with his fellow soldiers, but also a deep hatred for those he believed had betrayed Germany. The defeat of Germany and the subsequent economic turmoil of the Weimar Republic provided the conditions for his poisonous rhetoric to take root. The widespread discontent and instability of post-war Germany created a fertile ground for extremist ideologies to flourish. Hitler's experiences in the war, his deep-seated prejudices, and his burgeoning political ambitions would coalesce into a dangerous and toxic force, setting the stage for one of the darkest chapters in human history. His rise to power was fueled by a combination of personal ambition, societal unrest, and a ruthless determination to reshape the world according to his own twisted vision. How did Hitler rise to power? To understand the meteoric rise of Adolf Hitler, we must explore the crucible that forged his radical ideologies. After the devastating defeat of Germany in World War I, the country was plunged into economic despair and political chaos. The Treaty of Versailles, with its crippling reparations and territorial losses, left the nation humiliated and desperate for a savior. Amidst this turmoil, Hitler's early experiences and the volatile environment of post-war Germany would coalesce into a dangerous and toxic force. In the early 1920s, Hitler joined the German Workers' Party, a small nationalist group in Munich. He quickly rose through the ranks, transforming the party into the National Socialist German Workers' Party, or Nazi Party. His fiery oratory skills and ability to tap into the anger and frustration of the German people made him a charismatic leader. Hitler's speeches were not just words, they were a call to action, a promise of a new dawn for Germany. He preached a message of national revival, blaming Germany's woes on Jews, communists, and the perceived betrayal of the Weimar Republic. The early 1920s were marked by economic instability and hyperinflation, which decimated the savings of ordinary Germans. This period of extreme hardship made Hitler's promises of economic recovery and national rebirth all the more appealing. The Nazi Party's propaganda machine worked tirelessly to spread its message, using every available medium to reach the disillusioned masses. Beer halls and rallies became the breeding grounds for Nazi ideology, where ordinary Germans could gather, share their grievances, and find solace in the promises of a strong, unified nation. The failed Beer Hall Putsch of 1923, an attempted coup led by Hitler, resulted in his imprisonment. However, it also propelled him into the national spotlight. During his time in prison, Hitler wrote Mein Kampf, outlining his vision for Germany's future and solidifying his radical beliefs. Upon his release, he redoubled his efforts to gain political power through legal means. The Nazi Party's message of hope and renewal resonated deeply with a population desperate for change. As the Great Depression hit Germany particularly hard, the Nazis' appeal grew stronger. Businesses failed, unemployment soared, and social unrest grew. Hitler offered simple solutions to complex problems, scapegoating Jews and other minorities for Germany's woes. This tactic of finding a common enemy to blame united many Germans under the Nazi banner, creating a sense of solidarity and purpose. The Nazis skillfully exploited the anxieties of the time, presenting themselves as the only party capable of restoring order and prosperity. By 1933, the Nazi Party had become the largest party in the German parliament. Hitler, through a combination of political maneuvering, intimidation, and the exploitation of a national crisis, had positioned himself to seize absolute power. The stage was set for a dramatic and terrifying transformation of Germany, as the Nazis prepared to implement their vision of a new world order. The seeds of Hitler's radical ideology, sown in the trenches of World War I and nurtured by the chaos of post-war Germany, were about to bear their deadly fruit. The journey from a struggling artist to the Führer of Nazi Germany was marked by a perfect storm of personal ambition, societal unrest, and ruthless determination. The transformation of Adolf Hitler, from an embittered war veteran to the architect of one of history's most destructive regimes, was complete. The world would soon witness the devastating consequences of his rise to power. What were the key events in Hitler's rise? Understanding the pivotal moments that propelled Adolf Hitler from a disillusioned war veteran to the Führer of Nazi Germany requires a closer look at the timeline of his ascent. In 1919, Hitler joined the German Workers' Party, a small nationalist group in Munich. His exceptional oratory skills and ability to channel the anger and frustration of the German people quickly elevated him within the party ranks. By 1920, he had helped transform the party into the National Socialist German Workers' Party, or Nazi Party. The failed Beer Hall Putsch of 1923, an attempted coup led by Hitler, was a significant turning point. Although it resulted in his imprisonment, it also thrust him into the national spotlight. During his time in prison, Hitler penned Mein Kampf, outlining his radical vision for Germany's future and solidifying his ideological beliefs. Upon his release in 1924, Hitler redoubled his efforts to gain political power through legal means. The Nazi Party's message of national revival and economic recovery resonated deeply with a population reeling from hyperinflation and economic instability. By the late 1920s, Hitler had built a formidable propaganda machine, using every available medium to spread the Nazi message. The Great Depression of 1929 further amplified the party's appeal. As businesses failed and unemployment soared, Hitler's promises of jobs, stability, and a return to national greatness became even more attractive to the desperate German populace. In 1932, the Nazi Party became the largest party in the German parliament. Hitler's political maneuvering, combined with the use of intimidation and the exploitation of national crises, positioned him as a dominant political force. On January 30th, 1933, Adolf Hitler was appointed Chancellor of Germany. This appointment marked the beginning of a dramatic and terrifying transformation of the nation, as the Nazis prepared to implement their vision of a new world order. The Reichstag fire of February 27, 1933, provided a pretext for the Nazis to push through the Reichstag fire decree, which suspended civil liberties and allowed for the arrest of political opponents. This event further consolidated Hitler's power. On March 23, 1933, the Enabling Act was passed, giving Hitler dictatorial powers by allowing him to enact laws without the Reichstag's approval. This act effectively dismantled the democratic framework of the Weimar Republic. By mid-1934, Hitler had eliminated his internal rivals during the Night of the Long Knives, solidifying his control over the Nazi Party and the German military. The death of President Paul von Hindenburg on August 2, 1934, allowed Hitler to merge the positions of Chancellor and President, declaring himself Führer and Reich Chancellor of Germany. These key events, marked by strategic maneuvering, ruthless ambition, and the exploitation of societal unrest, paved the way for Hitler's absolute control over Germany. The world was on the brink of witnessing the devastating consequences of his rise to power. Pause 3S. Why did Hitler's ideology gain traction? Understanding the widespread appeal of Hitler's radical beliefs requires a deeper exploration into the socio-economic and political conditions of Germany in the early 20th century. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, imposed crippling reparations on Germany, leading to economic devastation. Hyperinflation made the German mark almost worthless, wiping out savings and causing widespread poverty. The middle class, once the backbone of German society, was particularly hard hit. This economic collapse created fertile ground for extremist ideologies that promised quick and radical solutions. The Weimar Republic, established after World War I, struggled to maintain stability. Political infighting, frequent changes in government, and a lack of effective leadership led many Germans to view the Republic as weak and incapable of addressing their problems. The political chaos made extremist parties like the Nazis appear as viable alternatives to the status quo. Hitler's message tapped into deep-seated resentments. He blamed Germany's woes on external enemies like the Allied powers, and internal ones like Jews, communists, and other minorities. This scapegoating provided simple answers to complex problems, making his ideology appealing to those seeking someone to blame for their suffering. Propaganda played a crucial role in spreading Nazi ideology. Joseph Goebbels, the Minister of Propaganda, masterfully utilized newspapers, radio broadcasts, films, and mass rallies to promote Hitler's vision of a strong, unified Germany. The Nazis created an image of Hitler as a savior who could restore Germany to its former glory. This relentless propaganda campaign ensured that the Nazi message reached every corner of the country. The Great Depression of 1929 further amplified the appeal of Hitler's ideology. As the global economic crisis hit Germany hard, unemployment soared and businesses collapsed. People were desperate for change and security. Hitler's promises of job creation, economic revival, and national pride resonated deeply with the desperate populace. Hitler's personal charisma and oratory skills were instrumental in gaining support. His speeches, filled with passion and conviction, captivated audiences and instilled a sense of hope and purpose. He presented himself as a man of the people, someone who understood their struggles and could lead them to a better future. The Nazis also skillfully used violence and intimidation to suppress opposition. The SA, or brown shirts, acted as the party's paramilitary wing, intimidating political opponents and disrupting their meetings. This created an atmosphere of fear and made it difficult for other parties to effectively challenge the Nazis. By exploiting the economic despair, political instability, and social unrest of the time, Hitler's ideology gained traction among a populace desperate for change. The combination of effective propaganda, scapegoating, and the promise of national revival made the Nazi message irresistibly appealing to many Germans. The rise of Hitler's ideology was not just a result of his personal charisma or the Nazi Party's tactics, but also a reflection of the profound crises facing Germany. The nation's longing for stability, pride, and a clear direction made it susceptible to the allure of radical solutions, setting the stage for the catastrophic events that would follow. When did Hitler's influence peak? To answer this question, we need to examine several key moments in his rise to power and the consolidation of his control over Germany. One pivotal moment came in 1933 when Adolf Hitler was appointed Chancellor of Germany. This appointment marked a significant turning point as it gave him the political platform he needed to further his agenda. The Reichstag fire in February 1933 provided a convenient pretext for Hitler to push through the Reichstag fire decree, which suspended civil liberties and allowed for the arrest of political opponents. This event effectively silenced any significant opposition to his rule. Following the Reichstag fire, the Enabling Act of March 1933 granted Hitler the authority to enact laws without the need for parliamentary consent. This act effectively dismantled the democratic framework of the Weimar Republic and gave Hitler dictatorial powers. With the Nazi Party's control over both the legislative and executive branches of government, Hitler began to implement his vision for Germany. Another critical moment in Hitler's consolidation of power was the Night of the Long Knives in June 1934. This purge targeted the SA leadership and other political adversaries within the Nazi Party, eliminating any potential threats to Hitler's authority. The event solidified his control over the party and the German military, ensuring that there were no significant internal challenges to his rule. Hitler's influence reached its zenith with the death of President Paul von Hindenburg in August 1934. Hitler combined the roles of Chancellor and President, declaring himself the Führer of Germany. This move centralized all state power in his hands, making him the unquestioned leader of the nation. His totalitarian regime was now fully established, and his policies began to reshape every aspect of German society. The Nuremberg Laws of 1935 further exemplified Hitler's peak influence. These laws institutionalized racial discrimination, particularly against Jews, and laid the groundwork for the systemic persecution that would culminate in the Holocaust. The widespread acceptance and implementation of these laws demonstrated the extent of Hitler's control over the German state and its institutions. The 1936 Berlin Olympics showcased Nazi Germany to the world. The event was used as a propaganda tool to promote the regime's ideals and demonstrate its strength and unity. The international community's largely positive reception of the Games bolstered Hitler's prestige and influence, both domestically and abroad. Hitler's foreign policy successes in the late 1930s, such as the remilitarization of the Rhineland in 1936 and the annexation of Austria in 1938, further solidified his position. These actions were met with little resistance from other European powers, emboldening Hitler and increasing his popularity at home. The Munich Agreement of 1938, which allowed Germany to annex the Sudetenland, was seen as a diplomatic triumph and a validation of his aggressive expansionist policies. By 1939, as Germany invaded Poland and World War II began, Hitler's influence was at its peak. His ability to rally the nation behind his militaristic and expansionist agenda demonstrated the extent of his control. The initial military successes of the war further cemented his standing among the German people and the Nazi Party. Hitler's influence peaked during the early years of World War II, but it was built on a foundation of political maneuvering, propaganda, and ruthless suppression of dissent. His rise to power was marked by a series of strategic moves that eliminated opposition and centralized authority, allowing him to implement his radical vision for Germany. The catastrophic impact of his policies would soon become evident as the war progressed and the true horrors of his regime were revealed. Pause 3S. The end of World War I brought Germany not peace but chaos. The nation was left in ruins, both physically and psychologically, as the devastating effects of the war permeated every aspect of German life. Humiliated by defeat and burdened by the harsh terms of the Treaty of Versailles, Germany descended into economic and political turmoil. The treaty imposed severe reparations, leading to hyperinflation and widespread poverty. German citizens, once proud and industrious, found themselves struggling to survive in a country that seemed to have lost its way. This period of instability and despair was fertile ground for extremist ideologies, and it was in this cauldron of resentment that the Nazi Party, with its message of nationalist revival and promises of restoring German greatness, found a receptive audience. The party's propaganda machine worked tirelessly to spread its message, using every available medium to reach the disillusioned masses. Discharged from the army after the war, Hitler returned to a defeated and demoralized Germany. Like many other soldiers, he felt betrayed by the politicians who had signed the armistice, believing that Germany had been stabbed in the back by its own leaders. He joined the small and insignificant German Workers' Party in Munich, quickly rising through the ranks through his fiery oratory and ability to tap into the anger and frustration of the German people. His speeches, filled with vitriol and promises of a better future, resonated deeply with those who felt abandoned by the current political system. The party, later renamed the National Socialist German Workers' Party or Nazi Party, offered a seductive message, blaming Germany's woes on internal enemies, Jews, communists and liberals, and promising national salvation through authoritarian rule and racial purity. This scapegoating provided a simple explanation for the complex problems facing Germany, making it easy for people to rally behind the Nazi cause. Hitler's charisma and his ability to channel popular anger proved potent. His speeches were not just words, they were a call to action, a promise of a new dawn for Germany. The fervor with which he spoke captivated audiences, drawing more and more people to the Nazi cause. He traveled tirelessly across Germany, delivering impassioned speeches in beer halls and at rallies. These venues became the breeding grounds for Nazi ideology, where ordinary Germans could gather, share their grievances, and find solace in the promises of a strong, unified nation. His message resonated with those who had lost faith in the weak Weimar Republic and longed for a return to order and national pride. The Weimar government, seen as ineffective and corrupt, struggled to maintain control, and many Germans yearned for a leader who could restore their nation's former glory. The Nazi Party, once a fringe group, grew rapidly in popularity, attracting disillusioned veterans, unemployed workers, and members of the middle class who had lost everything in the post-war economic collapse. The party's promises of jobs, stability, and a return to national greatness appealed to those who felt they had no future under the current regime. The Great Depression, which hit Germany particularly hard, further strengthened the Nazi Party's appeal. As businesses failed and unemployment soared, the Nazis' message of hope and renewal became even more attractive. People were desperate for change, and the Nazis promised to deliver it. As unemployment soared and social unrest grew, Hitler offered simple solutions to complex problems, scapegoating Jews and other minorities for Germany's woes. This tactic of finding a common enemy to blame united many Germans under the Nazi banner, creating a sense of solidarity and purpose. The Nazis skillfully exploited the anxieties of the time, presenting themselves as the only party capable of restoring order and prosperity. Their propaganda was relentless, painting a picture of a strong, disciplined Germany rising from the ashes of defeat. By 1933, the Nazi Party had become the largest party in the German parliament, and Hitler, through a combination of political maneuvering, intimidation, and the exploitation of a national crisis, had positioned himself to seize absolute power. The stage was set for a dramatic and terrifying transformation of Germany, as the Nazis prepared to implement their vision of a new world order. With Hitler appointed Chancellor in 1933, the Nazi Party moved swiftly to consolidate its grip on power. This marked the beginning of a dark chapter in history where the manipulation of fear and propaganda became tools of unprecedented control. One of their most effective tools was propaganda, a relentless campaign designed to shape public opinion and eliminate dissent. The Nazis understood that controlling the narrative was essential to maintaining their power. Joseph Goebbels, a master of manipulation, was appointed Minister of Propaganda and Public Enlightenment, and he used all the tools at his disposal, radio, film, newspapers, and mass rallies, to spread the Nazi message and demonize their enemies. Goebbels' propaganda was not just about spreading information. It was about creating a new reality for the German people. The Nazi propaganda machine was relentless in its portrayal of Hitler as a messianic figure, a savior who would lead Germany back to greatness. This image was carefully crafted to instill a sense of hope and destiny among the populace. His image was everywhere, on posters, in newspapers, and in the newsreels that played before films. The omnipresence of Hitler's image served to reinforce his authority and the idea that he was the ultimate leader. Hitler was portrayed as a man of the people, a charismatic leader who understood the needs of ordinary Germans. This portrayal was crucial in gaining the trust and loyalty of the masses. His speeches, often laced with anti-Semitism, nationalism, and promises of a glorious future, were broadcast on the radio, reaching millions of homes across Germany. These broadcasts were designed to resonate with the fears and aspirations of the German people. The Nazis understood the power of spectacle and emotion. They knew that large, dramatic events could create a sense of unity and purpose among the people. They organized massive rallies, carefully choreographed events designed to evoke awe and adulation. These rallies were not just political events. They were theatrical performances meant to captivate and inspire. At these rallies, held in vast stadiums adorned with swastika banners, Hitler would deliver his fiery speeches, whipping the crowds into a frenzy. The energy and emotion of these events were palpable, leaving a lasting impression on those who attended. The rallies were carefully stage-managed, with dramatic lighting, stirring music, and the rhythmic chanting of slogans, all designed to create an atmosphere of almost religious fervor. This meticulous planning ensured that every detail contributed to the overall impact. The Nazi propaganda machine was ruthlessly effective in silencing dissent. They understood that controlling the narrative also meant eliminating any opposing voices. Opposition parties were banned, their leaders arrested or driven into exile. This systematic suppression ensured that there were no alternative viewpoints to challenge the Nazi regime. Newspapers and radio stations were brought under state control, and those that dared to criticize the regime were shut down. The media became a tool of the state, used to reinforce the Nazi ideology and suppress any form of dissent. Books deemed subversive were publicly burned. This act of censorship was a powerful symbol of the regime's control over knowledge and information. The Nazis created a climate of fear and intimidation where even private conversations were suspect. This pervasive atmosphere of fear ensured that people were constantly aware of the regime's power and the consequences of dissent. Through their relentless propaganda, the Nazis were able to mold public opinion, suppress dissent, and create a totalitarian state where opposition was unthinkable. The success of their propaganda campaign was a testament to the power of fear and manipulation in controlling